Prison food, the shocking truth of what inmates really eat. At exactly 4:12 a.m., a steel door slides open inside one of America's largest prisons. No warning, no choice. A plastic tray is shoved through a narrow slot. On it, a gray slab of something pretending to be meat, 2 slices of bread already stale, and a scoop of food so overcooked its original identity is unrecognizable. This meal will cost the state less than $1, and it must sustain a human being for the next 12 hours. But here's the truth no one tells you. For millions of inmates around the world, food is not nutrition. It's not health. It's not even taste. Food is control. Today, we expose what inmates really eat behind bars, how prison food is made, why it looks the way it does, and how a single meal can decide whether a prison stays calm or erupts into chaos. This is not rumor. This is not exaggeration. This is the shocking truth of prison food. Why prison food matters. Most people never think about prison food. Why would they? It's easy to assume inmates get what they deserve. That food behind bars is meant to be basic, cheap, uncomfortable. But food inside prison is not just a meal. It's the most powerful psychological tool the system has. Every inmate, no matter their crime, depends on it. 3 meals a day, every day, for years, sometimes for life. And when food fails, so does everything else. Some of the largest prison riots in history didn't start with violence. They started in the kitchen. Spoiled meat, missing portions, food cutbacks. When inmates feel starved, disrespected, or poisoned, tension rises, anger spreads, and control slips away. Because in prison, food is survival. How much does a prison meal really cost? Let's talk numbers. In many U.S. state prisons, the average daily food budget per inmate ranges from $1.50 to $3. That's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner combined. To put that into perspective, that's less than the cost of a single fast food sandwich. And yet, prisons must feed hundreds or thousands of inmates every day. So how do they do it? The answer is industrial efficiency. Prison food is not cooked like home meals. It's produced like factory output. Frozen, pre-processed, bulk shipped from the lowest bidder. Flavor is irrelevant. Texture is optional. Nutrition is negotiable. What matters is one thing only: cost per serving. Breakfast, the meal that breaks you. Breakfast in prison is often the most demoralizing meal of the day. Why? Because it comes early, sometimes before sunrise, and because it reminds inmates of what they've lost. Common prison breakfasts include powdered eggs, watery oatmeal, dry toast, artificial margarine, a small carton of milk, often warm. Powdered eggs are not eggs as you know them. They're dehydrated, reconstituted with water, cooked in bulk. The result is a yellow mass with the texture of wet sponge. And for many inmates, this is breakfast every day. Inmate, sometimes the eggs smell like sulfur. Sometimes they're cold. But you eat it anyway, because if you don't, there's nothing else. Lunch, bulk, bland, and barely food. Lunch is where the system saves the most money. Meals are designed to be filling, not nourishing. Common lunch items include soy-based meat substitutes, overcooked pasta, white bread, canned vegetables boiled into submission. Soy is the backbone of modern prison food. It's cheap, it's filling, and it stretches portions. But excessive soy consumption has been linked by inmates themselves to stomach pain, fatigue, and hormonal issues. Yet complaints rarely go anywhere, because inmates don't choose a menu. They endure it. Dinner, the longest wait. Dinner is the final meal, and often the smallest. For inmates locked in their cells overnight, dinner must last until morning, sometimes 14 hours. Common dinners include mystery meatloaf, rice and beans, thin soup, cornbread so dry it crumbles on contact. Portion sizes are measured carefully. Too much food raises costs. Too little food raises tension. It's a balancing act. And inmates live on the edge of it every day. The loaf, prison's most controversial meal. Now we reach the most infamous food in prison history, the loaf, also known as neutral loaf, disciplinary loaf, punishment food. The loaf is a baked brick made from blended leftovers, meat, vegetables, beans, bread, all ground together, cooked into a dense, tasteless block. It is not served as a meal. It is served as punishment. Some inmates are forced to eat the loaf for days, sometimes weeks, and in some prisons, refusing it means starvation. But here's what the public doesn't know. The loaf isn't just food. It's a legal loophole, a psychological weapon, and a system designed to break resistance. In the next part, we expose how the loaf became legal, lawsuits filed over prison food, and how inmates turned scraps into underground economies. Because once you understand prison food, you understand prison power. Commissary, the real restaurant of prison. When prison food isn't enough, after a few weeks inside, every inmate reaches the same realization. The trays are not enough. Not enough calories. Not enough protein. Not enough dignity. Hunger becomes constant, a dull pressure that never leaves. And that's when inmates discover the system within the system. The commissary. What is commissary? Commissary is prison's version of store. Once a week, sometimes once every 2 weeks, inmates can buy food using money sent by family or earned from prison labor. But this isn't convenience shopping. It's survival economics. Common commissary items: instant noodles, peanut butter, tuna packets, chips, cookies, ramen seasoning, coffee, candy bars. These items are not luxury. They are currency. They replace nutrition. The trays fail to provide. And for inmates with no outside support, commissary might as well not exist. The price of poverty behind bars. Prison labor pays pennies. In many facilities, inmates earn 10 cents to 40 cents per hour. That means one packet of ramen, often priced at 75 cents to $1.25, can represent days of work. So inmates must choose carefully. Protein or sugar, coffee or soap, food or hygiene. Because once the money is gone, the trays are all you have. Ramen, the unofficial prison currency. One item rules above all others. Ramen noodles. Cheap, filling, portable. In some prisons, ramen replaces money entirely. Inmate, you want a favor? That's 2 soups. You want protection? That's 10. You owe somebody? They'll collect the noodles. Ramen becomes payment. Debt, power. And when debt goes unpaid, violence follows. Prison cooking, turning scraps into meals. With limited tools and no kitchens, inmates get creative. They invent meals using hot water, trash bags, lockers, electric outlets, body heat. This is known as prison cooking. Common creations: spread, ramen mixed with chips, tuna, and seasoning, peanut butter tortillas, coffee-based desserts, improvised soups. These meals are shared. Cooking becomes community, a moment of normalcy in a controlled world. But it's also dangerous, because cooking supplies attract attention, and attention attracts consequences. Food as power and punishment. Correctional officers understand food's influence. Meals are delayed to restore order. Portions are reduced as discipline. Commissary privileges are revoked as punishment. Food compliance equals behavioral control, and inmates know it. That's why hunger strikes exist. Hunger strikes, the final protest. When inmates stop eating, it's never about food alone. It's about dignity, medical care, conditions, survival. Hunger strikes force attention, but they come at a cost. Weakness, medical collapse, isolation, and sometimes death. Yet inmates keep doing it, because when food is the only leverage, refusing it becomes resistance. Private prisons and profit meals. In private prisons, food is a line item. The less spent, the more profit retained. Contracts are awarded to the lowest bidder. Quality declines. Complaints rise. Lawsuits follow. But accountability is rare, because inmates don't vote. And hunger doesn't leave visible scars. International prison food, worse or better. Around the world, prison food varies wildly. Some countries prioritize rehabilitation. Others prioritize punishment. In some systems, inmates cook their own meals. In others, food is intentionally minimal. But one rule remains universal. Whoever controls the food controls a prison. But what happens when prison food actually makes inmates sick? When meals trigger illness, spark lawsuits, and expose systemic neglect? In the next part, we reveal documented food poisoning cases, prison kitchen violations, and the hidden health crisis behind bars. Because hunger is only the beginning. When prison food makes you sick, the hidden health crisis. Hunger is only the first problem. Inside prison walls, there is a quieter crisis, one that rarely makes headlines. Illness caused by food, not allergies, not personal conditions, but meals that were spoiled, contaminated, or never safe to begin with. Inmates call it getting burned by the tray. And once it happens, there's no second option. Spoiled meat and rotting supplies. In many prisons, food deliveries arrive frozen and stay frozen until they don't. Power outages, broken freezers, overcrowded storage. Meat thaws, refreezes, and is served anyway. Inmate, you open a tray and the chicken smells sour, but you're starving, so you eat around it. Some inmates learn to smell danger. Others learn too late. Vomiting, diarrhea, fever, and medical attention is not guaranteed. Food poisoning outbreaks. Food poisoning outbreaks in prisons happen more often than the public knows. Entire cell blocks sick at once. Dozens vomiting. Medical units overwhelmed. But reports are minimized. Why? Because acknowledging an outbreak raises liability. And liability costs money. So outbreaks become stomach bugs, temporary discomfort, unverified complaints. And then life moves on. The soy controversy. Earlier we mentioned soy. Now we go deeper. Soy protein is cheap, extremely cheap. That's why it's used heavily in prison meals, often replacing real meat entirely. But inmates across multiple states have raised the same complaints. Chronic stomach pain, fatigue, headaches, digestive issues. Narrator, lawsuits have been filed, some dismissed, some settled quietly. The argument is always the same. Soy meets minimum nutrition standards. But minimum does not mean healthy. And inmates don't get a choice. Kitchen conditions, behind the scenes. Most people imagine prison kitchens as tightly controlled. The reality is more complicated. Many kitchens are staffed by inmates themselves. Understaffed, undertrained, rushed, equipment breaks. Cleaning supplies run low. Health inspections are announced in advance. Violations are documented, then ignored, because shutting down a prison kitchen is an option. Inmate kitchen workers. Kitchen jobs are highly sought after, not for pay, but for access. Inmate kitchen workers see everything. They know which meat is questionable, which vegetables are expired, which trays get better portions. But speaking up is dangerous. Whistleblowers risk losing their job, retaliation, isolation. So silence becomes survival. Food allergies and medical diets. Now consider this. Diabetes, hypertension, food allergies. In the outside world, diets are adjusted. Inside prison, medical diets exist on paper. In practice, mistakes are common, options are limited, and inmates often eat what they're given, or don't eat at all. For some, prison food isn't just unpleasant, it's dangerous. When food becomes a weapon. In extreme cases, food is used deliberately, trays withheld, meals delayed, commissary suspended, all legal, all justified as discipline. Because hunger doesn't leave bruises, and proving intent is nearly impossible. Lawsuits and legal battles. Inmates have sued over food. Some cases expose shocking details. Moldy bread, undercooked meat, rodent contamination. But most lawsuits fail. Courts require proof of deliberate indifference, and when complaints come from prisoners, they are often dismissed before they're heard. The psychology of control. By now, the pattern is clear. Food in prison is not just nourishment. It's leverage, routine, reward, punishment. It reminds inmates 3 times a day who is in control, and that control is absolute. But something unexpected happens when people are pushed to the edge. They adapt, they innovate, they build underground systems using nothing but scraps and desperation. In the next part, we expose food gangs, prison debts, smuggling rings, and how meals spark violence behind bars. Because once food becomes currency, everything has a price. Food, power, and violence behind bars. When food becomes currency, inside prison, money rarely changes hands. Food does. When trays fail to satisfy hunger, commissary items take over. And with that shift, a new economy is born. Ramen, tuna, coffee, sugar packets. These aren't snacks. They are units of value. And value creates hierarchy. The food economy. Every prison develops its own exchange rate. 2 soups for a haircut, 5 soups for laundry, 10 soups for protection. Debts are tracked mentally. Collections are enforced socially or physically. Inmate, if you owe and don't pay, people stop talking to you first. Then it gets worse. Food debt is not optional because hunger is universal. Food gangs and alliances. In some facilities, gangs control food flow. Who buys in bulk, who distributes, who eats well. They organize commissary pooling. One person orders. Others contribute. The result? Large, shared meals that build loyalty. Food becomes glue, and control over food becomes power. Smuggling and contraband. Where there is value, there is smuggling. Extra trays diverted. Kitchen food stolen. Commissary items hidden. Smuggling is risky, but hunger makes risk acceptable. Some inmates take kitchen jobs specifically to divert food, not to eat, but to trade, because one stolen bag of meat can feed an entire unit, or buy protection for months. When food triggers violence. Most prison violence doesn't start with hatred. It starts with deprivation, a missing tray, a stolen soup, an unpaid debt. Small conflicts escalate fast, because food is survival, and survival leaves no room for negotiation. Riots that started with meals. History shows a clear pattern. Prison riots often follow food changes, portion cuts, menu substitutions, expired supplies. One decision, made in an office, can ignite hundreds of people, because when inmates believe they're being starved, nothing else matters. Solitary confinement and food. In solitary confinement, food becomes even more powerful. Meals are eaten alone. No sharing. No trading. For some inmates, the tray is the only human contact they get. And when that tray is delayed or reduced, isolation deepens. Control through routine. Prison runs on routine. Wake up. Count. Eat. Lockdown. Food anchors time. Take that away, and chaos fills the gap. That's why meals are scheduled precisely, not for comfort, but for control. The long-term effects. Years of inadequate food leave marks. Weight loss, digestive issues, obsessive eating habits. Some former inmates say hunger never leaves them, even after release, because when food is uncertain long enough, the brain rewires itself around scarcity. Why the system doesn't change. By now, the question is obvious. Why doesn't prison food improve? The answer is uncomfortable. Inmates have no political power. Food budgets are invisible to voters, and suffering behind walls is easy to ignore. As long as meals meet minimum legal standards, nothing changes. But what happens when inmates are released? After years of hunger, control, and scarcity, how does prison food follow them back into free world? In the next part, we reveal life after prison food, psychological scars of hunger, and why some former inmates can never eat the same again. Because prison doesn't always end at the gate. When the gate opens, the hunger follows. Release day, the first meal outside. Release day is supposed to feel like freedom, paperwork, a final search, a door that opens outward instead of in. And then, the first real choice in years. What to eat. For many former inmates, this moment is overwhelming. Menus feel endless. Portions feel unreal. Flavors feel aggressive. Former inmate. I stared at the menu for 10 minutes. Too many choices. I didn't know what my stomach could handle. Because prison food doesn't just change the body. It changes the relationship with food itself. Binge, avoid, or control. Former inmates describe 3 common reactions after release. Some binge, eating constantly, afraid the food will disappear. Some avoid, sticking to bland meals, afraid of getting sick. Others try to control, counting portions, hoarding snacks, eating on strict schedules. These habits aren't choices. They're adaptations, learned under years of scarcity. The psychological scars of hunger. Psychologists call it food insecurity trauma. When access to food is unpredictable long enough, the brain shifts into survival mode. Even after release, the alarm doesn't shut off. Former inmates report anxiety around meals, guilt when food is wasted, panic when cupboards are empty. Freedom doesn't erase conditioning. It exposes it. Health consequences after prison. Years of low-quality meals take a toll. Digestive problems, nutrient deficiencies, blood sugar instability. Some former inmates struggle to tolerate rich food. Others crave the exact items they hated inside. White bread, instant noodles, cheap sugar, because those foods feel familiar, and familiarity feels safe. Why some miss prison food? Here's a truth that surprises people. Some former inmates say they miss prison food, not because it was good, but because it was predictable. 3 meals, same times, no decisions. Outside, choice brings pressure, and pressure brings anxiety. Food becomes one more thing that can go wrong. The cycle continues. For those who return to prison, the transition is immediate. The tray is waiting. The portions feel smaller than remembered. The hunger returns faster, but the body recognizes a routine. And that recognition is unsettling because it feels like home. Does better food reduce violence? Some facilities experimented with better meals, fresh ingredients, higher protein, cultural variety. The results? Reduced tension, fewer fights, improved behavior. But these programs are expensive, and expensive ideas rarely survive budget meetings. The rehabilitation question. If prison is meant to rehabilitate, what does constant hunger teach? That survival requires shortcuts. That power controls access. That scarcity is normal. Food could be a tool for dignity. Instead, it's often used as leverage, what the public never sees. Most people will never see a prison tray, never smell reheated soy, never wait 14 hours for the next meal. And because it's hidden, it's easy to dismiss. But prisons don't exist in isolation. They shape the people who eventually return to society. The system in one tray. A prison tray tells the whole story. Cost over care. Control over choice. Survival over dignity. 3 times a day. For years. Food becomes a lesson. Repeated until it sticks. So here's the final question. Is prison food meant to feed people? Or is it meant to remind them of their place? In the next part, we bring everything together, the past, the system, and the future of prison meals. Because what inmates eat today shapes who they become tomorrow. Closing the gate. Every prison has walls. Every cell has bars. But the most powerful boundary is the one no one sees. A plastic tray, a measured portion, a meal designed not to nourish, but to remind. For years, food inside prison has been treated as an afterthought, a budget line, a cost to be minimized. Yet every tray tells a story of control, of survival, of what happens when hunger becomes routine. And when the gate finally opens, that hunger doesn't always stay behind. Because prisons don't just hold people, they shape them. If this story made you see the system differently, if it revealed a truth that's rarely discussed, then don't let it end here. Like this video so more people can see what's hidden behind the walls. Share it, because conversations create pressure, and pressure creates change. And subscribe for more deep, investigative documentaries that expose the realities most never witness. Because the stories that matter most are often the ones we're told not to look at.